The hospital parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered under the cold flicker of overhead lights. I sat in mine, keys still in the ignition, hands shaking around the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again. "Do not go in there." It was the third text in less than 10 minutes, all from him, my husband. I stared at the screen, read the words over and over, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't obey. I shut the phone off, grabbed my coat, and stepped into the night air. My father was dying, right upstairs, in room 402. Stage 4 cancer. No more treatment, no more time. And the man who claimed to love me, the man who had vowed to stand by me, had tried to keep me from him. He said it was for my own good, that my father had hurt me too many times, that I was too emotional to handle it. He'd deleted my brother's messages, ignored the voicemails, lied straight to my face. I almost believed him. For weeks, I'd asked about my dad, wondered why he hadn't called. My husband always had an answer. "He's busy. He doesn't care. You know how he is." And I trusted him. Like a fool, I trusted him. Until last night, when I found a letter tucked inside a drawer in the garage. A letter addressed to me. From my father. Handwritten. Shaky. Dated 2 months ago. "I wish I could see you one more time," it said, "but if I can't, please know I love you. I never stopped." My world shattered, and right then something inside me snapped. He thought he had control, that I'd do what I always did. Listen, stay, obey. But he had no idea what I'd already done. The first time he pulled me away from my father, it seemed innocent. We had just gotten married, and he said, "Let's spend the holidays with my family this year. Your dad will understand." And he did. My father always understood. The second time, it was my birthday. I wanted to invite my dad over for dinner. My husband told me, "You know, he always makes things awkward. Don't you want tonight to be peaceful?" I didn't fight it. I wanted peace too. But it wasn't until the small things started adding up that I realized something was off. He always forgot to tell me when my father called. "Oh, he left a message? Sorry, I must have deleted it by accident." He changed the subject every time I brought him up. If I pushed, he'd sigh and say, "I just hate seeing you hurt. He's not good for you." And the worst part? I believed him, because he didn't just try to isolate me. He made it feel like protection, like love. He wrapped control in concern. My father and I had a complicated history, sure. My childhood wasn't perfect, but he showed up for me when it mattered. Graduation, the wedding, when I had a miscarriage and thought I'd never stop crying. He sat with me for hours, just holding my hand. But according to my husband, those memories were distorted. He told me trauma made me see things wrong, said I was emotionally unstable. I started to question my own instincts. He slowly chipped away at me, my confidence, my independence, even my memory. He controlled the bank accounts, said it was simpler if he handled the bills. I stopped asking. He changed my phone plan to be under his name. "Just easier," he said. I stopped noticing how much I was giving up. I was too busy trying to keep him happy. Then came the night I mentioned wanting to call my dad, just to check in. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Why?" The man never cared. He didn't call when we bought this house, didn't show up when you had surgery. He's not who you think he is. It wasn't true. But he said it with such certainty, I couldn't argue. So I let it go. Weeks passed, then months, and I kept shrinking. I stopped bringing my father up. My brother, too. We used to talk every week. Now we hadn't spoken in almost a year. Every time I tried calling, something came up. Or my husband would say, "Let's go out tonight," right as I picked up the phone. And that's how it works. Not all at once. but little by little, until you forget what your life looked like without someone else's voice in your head. The day I found the letter, I was in the garage looking for packing tape. A torn envelope had fallen behind a cabinet. My name was scrawled across the front in my father's handwriting, barely legible, like his hand could barely hold the pen. Inside was a single page. The words weren't long, but they didn't need to be. I wish I could see you one more time. I don't know if these letters are getting through, but I keep writing them anyway. I miss you, and I love you. I always have. My knees buckled. I called my brother immediately. He answered on the first ring. I hadn't heard his voice in a year. He was crying before I even said hello. "Where have you been?" he asked. "We've been trying to reach you for months. Dad's dying and we thought you didn't care." That was the moment I realized the full truth. It wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just control. It was deliberate. My husband had been cutting off every line of connection to my family. Not because they were toxic, but because they were the only people who could have pulled me out of his grip. He knew if I saw them, if I talked to them, if I remembered who I was before him, I'd leave. So he made sure I forgot. But when I read that letter, I remembered everything. And in that moment, something broke open inside me, not like glass shattering, more like a vault door unlocking. I wasn't going to fight him. I was going to outsmart him. And I'd already started. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't scream, didn't demand an explanation. That's what he would have expected. Chaos. Tears. Something he could twist into more proof that I was unstable. No, I stayed quiet. Calm. I made dinner. Kissed his cheek. Pretended everything was normal. And while he watched TV, I started planning. I went into the guest bathroom, turned on the shower to cover any sound, and locked the door. Then I pulled out the old phone I'd hidden in the back of a drawer months ago. No SIM card. Just Wi-Fi. He'd forgotten it even existed. I used it to call my brother. The relief in his voice made my throat close up. "I'm coming to see you," I said, "but he can't know, not yet." And just like that, the first crack in the wall he built around me split wide open. Over the next few days, I played my part, smiled, nodded. Let him believe I was still under his thumb. All the while, I was setting traps. I contacted a therapist online, explained my situation. We spoke in short sessions, always when he was out. She validated everything: the isolation, the financial control, the emotional manipulation. "You're not imagining this," she said. "You're in a coercive relationship." Hearing someone say it out loud was like a light being switched on in a pitch-dark room. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I'd been tricked, managed, lied to, but not anymore. I started collecting evidence. I recorded our conversations. Not the explosive ones. He'd learned to keep those rare. No, I captured the quieter abuse, the guilt trips, the gaslighting, the dismissive jabs designed to make me question myself. "You're lucky I take care of everything. You'd be lost without me. Your family always drains you. I'm just protecting your energy. It's not my fault your dad wasn't there when you needed him. Stop rewriting the past." I kept a journal too. Every word, every moment, every lie. Then I opened a separate bank account, just in my name. I started setting aside small amounts of cash from grocery runs, returns, birthday money. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every dollar was a step toward the door. When I finally visited my father, he was thin, frail. But his eyes lit up when he saw me. He tried to speak, but the effort winded him, so I held his hand and whispered everything I hadn't said in years. "I'm here. I'm sorry it took so long." He squeezed my hand. And that was enough. I visited again the next week, and again after that. My husband never knew. I told him I was running errands. Sometimes I brought back takeout to make it believable. Every time I returned, I was one step closer to detaching. He didn't suspect a thing. In his mind, he still had control, still had me. But I had already left him, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was just waiting for the moment to leave him physically. And then I took the final step. I hired a lawyer, not a cheap one. A woman who specialized in emotional abuse and high-conflict separations. We met in her office. I told her everything. She didn't flinch. "You've got more than enough," she said. "When you're ready, we move." I nodded. I wasn't ready that day. But I was close. The last conversation I had with my father was just a few days before he passed. He looked at me, struggling to breathe, and said, "You don't owe anyone your silence." I kissed his forehead and said, "Don't worry, Dad." I already started talking. And I meant it, because by then I had everything I needed: a plan, proof, power. The woman who once sat in that house wondering if she was the problem was gone. I was wide awake now, and the man who tried to break me had no idea he was about to lose everything. The day after my father died, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I expected to. But the grief hit differently. Quiet, deep, like standing in the middle of the ocean and realizing the water doesn't end. But I didn't have time to sink. Not yet. My husband came home from work that evening and found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. He asked what was wrong, sounding more annoyed than concerned. I told him I was just tired. He nodded. "You should rest. You've been all over the place lately." I almost laughed. The irony. He had no idea where I'd been, who I'd seen, what I was building. That same night, I emailed my lawyer. We were moving forward. The paperwork would be ready by the end of the week. The plan was simple, precise, quiet. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg him to understand. I wasn't going to give him a single chance to twist it around and make me feel guilty. This time, I wasn't asking for permission. I spent the next few days tying up loose ends. I transferred more money into the private account. Birthday gifts, extra cash from errands, little things he never noticed. I backed up my journal, recordings, and emails to a secure cloud folder. I handed my lawyer copies of everything. Meanwhile, I kept smiling. I made dinner, I folded laundry. I watched Netflix with him on the couch, nodding at his commentary like I cared. And every time he said something smug or passive-aggressive, I mentally added it to the pile. "You'd be a wreck without me," he said once after handling a small car issue. "You're lucky I'm patient," he muttered, after I forgot to buy eggs. He was still so sure he had the upper hand, still so certain I was his quiet, obedient wife. But every night, I laid in bed and rehearsed my next move like a soldier mapping out the battlefield. I had one final task before everything went into motion: telling my brother. I called him the night before I filed. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. "I've never been more ready." And I was, not just to leave, but to become someone else entirely, someone he would never see coming. That Friday, he went to work like usual. I waited an hour. Then I packed. Only the essentials: clothes, important documents, my father's letter. I didn't take anything sentimental we bought together. I didn't want reminders. I didn't want pieces of a life built on lies. Then I went to my lawyer's office and signed everything. The separation, the restraining order, the cease and desist for accessing my accounts, my phone, anything. I asked her one last question before I left. "Can you make sure he gets served at work?" She smiled. "Absolutely." And just like that, I walked out and never looked back. I stayed with my brother that weekend. He cleared out his guest room, bought my favorite cereal, made coffee the way Dad used to, strong, with a splash of cream. We sat on the porch the morning after I left, watching the sunrise like we used to as kids. "You look taller," he said. I smiled. "I feel it." Then my phone rang. I didn't answer, but I watched the screen light up. His number. Again and again. Then came the texts. "What is this? Why did I get served at work? What the hell is going on? You're overreacting. Let's talk like adults." I didn't respond. I was done talking. He followed up with emails, voicemails. He tried reaching out to my brother, even my therapist, which meant he had gone through my things, snooping for answers. He didn't find any. Everything important was already out of reach. And then I released the recordings. My lawyer advised it, said it would make the restraining order stronger, especially with the way he was already trying to regain control. We sent them to the court, but I also sent one specific clip to someone else. His boss. It wasn't malicious. It was necessary. He worked in a leadership role at a company that promoted mental health awareness and family values. They had a zero-tolerance policy for emotional abuse. The clip I sent? Him saying, "You'd be nothing without me. No one else would put up with your crazy. You should be grateful I even married you." He was placed on leave within 48 hours, and suddenly the narrative flipped. He wasn't the calm, reasonable husband anymore. He wasn't the victim of an emotional wife. He was exposed. I started getting messages. People from our social circle. Some were shocked. Some apologized for not seeing it. Others admitted they had seen signs, but were afraid to get involved. And you know what? I didn't need their validation. Because this story, my story, was no longer about what anyone else thought. It was about reclaiming every part of me he tried to break. I moved into my own apartment by the end of the month. Small. Quiet. But it was mine. I painted the walls. Filled it with music again. Called my brother whenever I wanted. Visited my father's grave without asking permission. I could finally breathe. This was only the beginning. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been made to feel small, erased, or controlled, then you know how this feels. Subscribe now, because the moment I walked out that door, everything changed. The court date was set for 2 weeks after the papers were served. I showed up early, sitting in my car outside the building, sipping coffee with calm hands. That was new. My hands used to shake around him. Back when I still cared what he thought. Back when I thought keeping the peace was more important than having peace of my own. Now? I just wanted the truth in the open. When he walked into the courtroom, I almost didn't recognize him. His suit was wrinkled, his jaw clenched, eyes scanning the room like he was still trying to figure out how all this had happened. His world, the one he built on manipulation and lies, was crumbling, and he couldn't understand why I wasn't trying to stop it. He didn't greet me, didn't look at me, just sat down next to his lawyer and whispered something sharp. He looked smaller. Not physically, something deeper. Like he knew deep down that the version of me he could control was gone for good. The hearing was brief, but brutal. My lawyer laid out everything: the recordings, the bank account control, the isolation from my family. She used calm clinical terms: coercive control, psychological manipulation, intentional obstruction of familial contact. But every word landed like a hammer. Then came the evidence of what he did after my father got sick. The blocked messages, the lies, the forged signature on a consent form for my phone account that allowed him to monitor my calls. My brother submitted a statement. The therapist sent her notes. I didn't have to say much. My presence spoke for itself. He tried to defend himself, said I was overreacting, that I was emotionally fragile, that he was just trying to protect me. But even his voice didn't sound convinced anymore. Every excuse rang hollow. And when the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up. I looked right at him and said, "You tried to take everything from me, my family, my voice, my sense of reality. You almost succeeded. But I survived you. And now, I'm free." The room was silent. The judge granted me a protective order. Froze joint assets until the divorce was finalized. Gave me full authority over communications with shared contacts and access to the full financial history of our accounts. It was everything we asked for, and more. He left the courtroom red-faced, pacing, trying to hide behind his sunglasses. Reporters were outside, not for me, but for him. Word had spread fast about the recordings. His company had issued a statement. Pending review of disturbing allegations. He wouldn't be working there much longer. I walked right past him, no eye contact, no pause. And then the final blow. I released my statement, a simple blog post, anonymous but raw. I didn't use his name. I didn't need to. It was about my father, about the months I lost. The grief I was forced to swallow in silence, about how I found the letter that saved me, and how I used that letter to save myself. The post went viral within 48 hours. Thousands of women commented. Some told similar stories. Others said they finally recognized what they were going through. Some were angry, some heartbroken. But the message was clear. I wasn't the only one, and neither were they. I turned off my phone the night after the hearing. Sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights flicker against the sky. And for the first time in forever, I felt still. Not numb, not broken. Still. The storm had passed, and the man who once told me I'd fall apart without him, he was the one unraveling. But the most satisfying part? I didn't destroy him with rage. I didn't scream or throw things or beg for closure. I used his own words, his own patterns, his own arrogance, and I let the truth do the rest. The funeral was quiet, small, just family and a few old friends who had stayed close through the years. I wore a black dress my father once said made me look strong. I stood at the front of the chapel, my hands steady, my voice clear, and spoke the words I'd held in my chest since the day I found his letter. My father didn't get everything right. None of us do. But he loved me, fully, completely, and without conditions. And when I was lost, it was his words that brought me back. I didn't speak about my husband. I didn't need to. He had already become what he feared most, irrelevant. That day, I didn't just bury my father. I buried the version of myself who waited for permission to live. After the service, my brother wrapped his arm around me and we sat together at the gravesite, in silence. No more pain between us. No more distance. A week later, I finalized the last of the paperwork. The court granted me the divorce with full asset protection. Everything he tried to hide, I now had access to. And the protective order was extended another year. He didn't fight it. His job was gone. His reputation shredded. He'd been asked to step away from a speaking event he'd once bragged about for weeks. No one wanted to be associated with the man who silenced a woman as her father was dying. And yet, I didn't feel vindictive. I didn't need him to suffer. He simply didn't matter anymore. I moved into a new apartment closer to my brother, a place with light and plants and a quiet strength in every corner. I painted one wall in my living room, a deep forest green, a color my dad always said reminded him of home. I started volunteering at a local support group. Women came in with the same haunted look I used to wear. And I listened, really listened, because I knew what it felt like to be unheard, gaslit, dismissed. One evening after a session, a young woman came up to me. "Your story. I read it online," she said. "I didn't know what I was in until I heard your words." I nodded. "You're not alone." That moment meant more to me than any courtroom victory. Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's rising so far beyond what someone expected of you, they couldn't reach you even if they tried. A few weeks later, I got one final message from him. It wasn't angry or apologetic, just one line. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." I didn't respond. He never really saw me. Not the real me. Just the version he could manipulate. But the woman I am now, he wouldn't recognize her. I visit my father's grave every Sunday. I bring coffee and sit under the tree nearby. Some days I talk. Other days, I just sit in the stillness. And sometimes I think about everything I lost. The time, the peace, the chances I'll never get back. But I also think about what I gained. Clarity, boundaries, power. My father never got to see the ending, but I think he'd be proud. He once told me, "You don't need to shout to be strong. You just have to be sure." And now I am. So here's my message to anyone listening. If someone tries to isolate you, control you, silence you, they don't love you. Real love doesn't cage you. It sees you. It supports you. It walks beside you. And if you're scared to leave, that's okay. Start with one step, then another. Because the day you stop shrinking yourself to make someone else comfortable, that's the day you start coming back to life. He tried to keep me from saying goodbye to my father. But in the end, I said goodbye to him first.